The Operation of Moses was one of the biggest political scams to make Ethiopians think that their Israel was in the Middle East. This operation was a planned scheme to bring Ethiopian Jews to persuade and promote their 1948 Israel, and to create a migration under the law of return as the promised land to establish and justify their history. This CIA document called In Ethiopia's Exodus, Moses Was American by Charles T. Powers was made March 30th, 1985, but approved for release in May 2nd, 2012. And it mentions how Khartoum, Sudan, like their afflicted ancestors centuries before, they were sick and starving, persecuted Jews trapped in a land of Africa. Not Egypt this time, but in their Sudan, fleeing famine and discrimination in their native Ethiopia. They had become refugees stranded in a world where they were alien. But like the Hebrews of old, these thousands of Ethiopian Jews found an unlikely Moses, and the full story of their modern-day exodus during the last several months to a promised land is just now being told. Like the ancient journey, this one brought hazards. There was birth and death, panic and confusion, and the travel across the wilderness by night, but there were modern twists. This time, jetliners bore the Jews to safety, and their chief deliverer was not an Israelite, but an American. Apparently, it has been called Operation Moses and involved a tribe of Ethiopian Jews, some of whose members trace their ancestry back to what they say was the union of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba. It was called Operation Moses as a metaphor for their performance to portray as if they are fulfilling prophecy. During the famine in Ethiopia due to changing of governments and rulership, this was the same time when the Israelis was establishing the Jewish law that passed in the 1980s. To declare Jerusalem as a capital of their Israel. The Jewish refugees were quietly taken from camps in the Sudan and then airlifted to Israel. The operation began on the night of November 21st. In all, 36 flights were made, taking about 7,800 Ethiopian Jews from Sudan. The operation was held and the insistence of the Sudanese 2 days after the news of the airlift was made public in Israel. The last flight was January 6. When news of the flight leaked and the operation was suspended, it was widely assumed that the Israeli government had masterminded and run the airlift. However, the Israelis never planned nor directed the operation's most crucial elements. Similarly, the CIA, which directed a swift airlift to Israel on March 22nd of about 500 Jews who had been left behind, had nothing to do with the Operation Moses. And that operation that they're talking about is called Operation Joshua. With the financing of Israeli sources and the probable blessing of the government of Sudan, the plan for Operation Moses was developed and carried out by a U.S. Embassy official. Here, a veteran of several years served in Sudan. His efforts had the full support of the U.S. State Department, which asked that his name be withheld from this account to avoid possible retaliation from Arab extremists. The U.S. official plan of Operation Moses called for the movement of the Jews from the refugee settlement of Tuwawa, 2 miles north of the eastern Sudanese town Gigaref. And then this article continues to talk about how the Ethiopian Jews were transported. What's most interesting about this operation is that this operation was kept a secret. A secret because it is a political and terrorist-related kidnapping. A scam based to justify a land that is not established by God. To portray and reward themselves as Jews of Israel.